The harmattan wind carried dust and broken dreams as Chioma Nwachukwu stood outside the iron gates of the Lekki mansion, her trembling hands pressed against the small swell of her belly where a 3-month miracle grew in secret. The security guard who had once greeted her with warm smiles and respectful bows now looked through her as if she were invisible, following orders that cut deeper than any Igbo curse. "Oga, please," she whispered in broken Yoruba, her voice barely audible over the bustling Lagos traffic. "I just need to collect my things." But the gates remained locked, and inside those walls, the man she had loved with every breath in her body was probably already planning his future with someone else, someone who had the audacity to return from London after abandoning him when he had nothing, only to claim him now that he had everything. 7 years. 7 years of sacrifice, of believing in dreams that weren't even her own, of pouring her soul into building an empire that would never acknowledge her contribution. And now, pregnant with his child, she was being discarded like yesterday's newspaper, replaced by a ghost from his past who had chosen Oyabo opportunities over African love the first time around. Chioma had been 23 when she first met Emeka Okafor, a struggling software developer with calloused hands from fixing computers in Computer Village and fire in his eyes. He was pitching his mobile banking app to her uncle's small investment group in Victoria Island, desperate for the funding that would keep his dream alive for another month. While other investors saw only risk in backing a young Igbo man with big ideas but no connections, Chioma saw potential, not just in his revolutionary idea, but in the man himself. "You are mad if you think this thing will work," her uncle had said after Emeka left, his business plan rejected by everyone in the room. "These small boys from the East, they have big mouth but no sense." But Chioma had followed Emeka out into the chaos of Lagos streets, dodging downfall buses and kicking a pep as she called his name. When he turned, his face was a canvas of defeat, shoulders slumped under the weight of another rejection. She still remembered the exact words that changed both their destinies forever. "I believe in your vision," she had said, offering him her savings, money she had been keeping for her master's degree at the University of Lagos. "Take it. Build your dream." Emeka had stared at her with something between gratitude and disbelief, his Igbo accent thick with emotion. "Sister, why you go do this thing? You no even know me well. Sometimes you don't need to know someone completely to see their worth," she had replied, and meant it with every beat of her heart. That day marked the beginning of everything. Not just his company, but their love story, or what she had believed was a love story. Emeka's one-room apartment in Surulere became their headquarters, his small table their boardroom. While he coded through the night, she handled the business side, learning about partnerships and regulatory requirements, making calls to potential clients with a confidence she manufactured daily. They lived on Indomie and dreams, sleeping on a thin mattress that barely fit the room, sharing a single laptop that overheated whenever NEPA took the light. But Chioma had never been happier. In Emeka's eyes, she saw her reflection as someone valuable, someone essential. When he looked at her, she felt like she could move mountains. "We go make am, Chioma," he would whisper during the darkest moments, when bankruptcy seemed inevitable and their competitors appeared insurmountable. "You and me, we go build something we go shock this Nigeria." And they did. Slowly, painfully, but steadily, their company grew. Chioma's business instincts proved as sharp as Emeka's technical genius. She was the one who convinced the Central Bank of Nigeria to give their app a chance when traditional banks dismissed them. She negotiated their first partnership with a major telecom company while Emeka was hospitalized with malaria from stress and overwork. When their mobile banking app finally launched, it revolutionized how ordinary Nigerians accessed financial services. Market women in Alaba could send money to their children in university. Okada riders could pay for fuel without carrying cash. Small business owners could access loans without the nightmare of traditional banking bureaucracy. The success was intoxicating. Within 2 years, they had expanded across West Africa. Emeka's face graced the covers of business magazines as Nigeria's youngest tech billionaire. International investors courted them. The government invited Emeka to economic summits. But through it all, Chioma remained in the background, the strategic mind behind every major decision, content to let Emeka shine in the spotlight she had helped create. Their personal relationship bloomed alongside their professional success. Love grew in the space between shared struggles and whispered strategies. Emeka's first kiss had tasted like the zobo they bought from the woman downstairs and felt like coming home to a place she had never known existed. When they finally moved from Suralere to a proper flat in Ikoyi, Chioma felt like they were becoming the people they had dreamed of being. The day they bought the Lekki mansion, 27 bedrooms of marble and ambition, Emeka had carried her across the threshold like they were newlyweds. "Marry me, Chioma," he had said one evening as they stood on the balcony of their new office in Victoria Island, watching Lagos sprawl below them like scattered stars. Their app had just processed its billionth transaction, and the future stretched before them, golden with possibility. Chioma had said yes without hesitation, her heart so full she thought it might burst. The traditional marriage ceremony was everything she had dreamed of, her family traveling from Enugu, Emeka's people coming from Anambra, the whole community celebrating their union with music and masquerade dances that lasted until dawn. For 3 years, they lived that dream. The company went international, making them wealthy beyond their wildest hopes. They hosted governors and foreign dignitaries in their mansion, their success story becoming legend among Nigeria's tech community. Chioma threw herself into supporting Emeka's growing influence, attending state dinners and economic forums, playing the perfect CEO's wife while continuing to make crucial business decisions behind the scenes. She never suspected that their happiness was built on foundations that could crumble so easily. Adoni Williams had been Emeka's secondary school girlfriend at King's College Lagos, the daughter of a wealthy Lagos family who had promised to wait for him while he pursued his engineering degree. But when admission to Oxford came with a full scholarship to study investment banking, she had chosen security over sentiment, leaving Emeka heartbroken and determined to prove himself worthy of love that wouldn't abandon him when life demanded patience. "She was my first love," Emeka had confided to Chioma early in their relationship, during one of those late-night conversations when they shared their deepest scars. "When she left for London, I thought I would never trust my heart again. But then God sent you to me." Chioma had felt pity for the girl who had been too young and too privileged to recognize what she was throwing away. Little did she know that Adoni's return would prove that some people never change, they just get better at disguising their greed. Adoni reappeared at the African Development Bank Summit, 7 years of London sophistication wrapped around the same calculating core that had driven her away in the first place. She was stunning, successful in her own right as a senior partner at a prestigious investment firm, and she moved through the crowd of African business leaders with the confidence of someone who had conquered international markets. Emeka, she had breathed when she approached their table, her voice carrying just the right note of surprise and cultured delight, her British accent polished but not quite erasing her Lagos roots. "I heard about your incredible success. I always knew you would change the world." Chioma had watched her husband's face transform, youth and old pain flickering across his features like shadows from a masquerade dance. For a moment, he was 18 again, watching the woman he loved choose Oyabo dreams over their shared future. Adoni was smart enough to acknowledge Chioma graciously, to play the role of the sophisticated ex-girlfriend who harbored no ill will toward the woman who had taken care of Emeka so beautifully. But Chioma had built her life on reading people, on understanding the motivations that drove Lagos power players. She saw the calculation behind Adoni's smile, the way her eyes assessed the wealth displayed around them, the subtle touches she bestowed on Emeka's arm that lasted precisely one moment too long. "She seems accomplished," Chioma had said carefully during the ride home through Lagos traffic. "She broke my heart completely," Emeka had replied, staring out at the neon glow of Victoria Island. "But I suppose we all make foolish choices when we're young and don't understand our own worth." The first crack in their marriage appeared so subtly that Chioma almost missed it. Emeka began mentioning Adoni casually, how she had offered connections to European venture capitalists, how she understood the complexities of international expansion, how she had matured into exactly the kind of sophisticated partner a global CEO needed. These conversations felt like small betrayals, each mention of Adoni's name a tiny knife twisted in Chioma's chest. She watched helplessly as the woman who had abandoned Emeka when he was nobody slowly repositioned herself as indispensable to Emeka now that he was somebody. Adoni was brilliant in her manipulation. She didn't pursue Emeka directly. Instead, she became crucial to his business expansion, offering connections to London investors, providing insights into European markets that their company was trying to penetrate. She positioned herself as the missing piece of Emeka's global empire, the internationally educated partner who could help him achieve the kind of success that would make Nigeria proud on the world stage. "She's just consulting on the European expansion," Emeka would say when Chioma expressed concern about the increasing frequency of their meetings. "Her connections in London are invaluable for our growth strategy." But Chioma knew better. She had seen the way Emeka looked at Adoni during their business dinners at expensive Victoria Island restaurants, with the intensity of a man trying to rewrite history, trying to prove that he had become worthy of the love that had once rejected him for lacking international credentials. Adoni fed this hunger expertly, offering just enough attention to keep him intoxicated while maintaining the pretense of professional propriety. The end came swiftly, like a Lagos building collapse that seemed sudden but had been weakening for months. Chioma discovered she was pregnant on the same day that Emeka announced he wanted a divorce, standing in their bedroom overlooking the lagoon as if those words could erase 7 years of shared dreams and struggles. "I love her," he said simply, his voice carrying the finality of a court judgment. "I never stopped loving her. What we had was necessary, comfortable. But Adoni is my true partner, the woman who can stand beside me as we build a global empire." Partnership. As if their marriage had been some sort of business arrangement, a stepping stone while he waited for his real love to return from her international adventures. As if the company they had built together, the revolution that bore his name but carried her fingerprints on every innovation, had been some sort of fortunate accident. "I'm pregnant," Chioma whispered, her hand instinctively moving to protect the life growing inside her. For a moment, something flickered across Emeka's face, surprise, perhaps even joy. But then it hardened into something cold and calculating, and Chioma realized that Adoni's influence had already poisoned him against the family they could have been. "The timing is unfortunate," he said, and those words shattered her heart into pieces so small she would never find them all. "Adoni and I are planning to marry next month. Her family expects a proper wedding befitting our international status. A pregnancy would complicate the narrative we're building." Complicate the narrative. Their child, his child, would complicate his fairy tale reunion with the woman who had abandoned him for British pounds and European opportunities. The divorce papers arrived with shameful speed, along with a settlement offer that was generous by middle-class standards but insulting considering her foundational role in their success. Emeka's lawyers painted her as an opportunistic village girl who had manipulated a vulnerable young man, conveniently forgetting that she had believed in him when Lagos investors laughed him out of their offices. Adoni, meanwhile, played her role to perfection. She was gracious in victory, expressing sympathy for Chioma's situation while making it clear that she and Emeka were destined to build something truly global. She even had the audacity to suggest that the divorce was best for everyone, as if she were doing Chioma a favor by stealing the husband she had never deserved. Now, standing outside the gates of the Lekki mansion she had helped envision and purchase, Chioma felt the full weight of her naivety. She had believed in love, in partnership, in the idea that loyalty and sacrifice would be rewarded with forever. Instead, she had learned that some men would always choose the woman who represented their aspirations over the woman who had supported their journey, that prestige could eclipse gratitude, that first loves cast shadows that could swallow even the brightest present happiness. Her phone buzzed with a message from her lawyer. The settlement had been finalized, the papers signed in Ikoyi High Court. She was officially divorced from the man she had spent 7 years loving, officially erased from the company she had helped birth, officially reduced to a footnote in the success story that wouldn't exist without her vision and sacrifice. But as she turned away from those closed gates, her hand still pressed protectively over her stomach, Chioma made a silent promise to the child growing inside her. She would rebuild. She would create something new, something that belonged to her alone, something that no Lagos big boy could take away. She had done it once with Emeka, she could do it again without him. The Harmattan season was ending, but Chioma no longer felt like she was suffocating in the dust. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe clearly. The woman who had helped build a tech empire was about to discover that she had always been the true architect of innovation. Emeka and Adoni could have their internationally acclaimed reunion, their society wedding that would grace the pages of Ovation magazine. Chioma would write her own ending, one where she was the heroine of her own story, not a supporting character in someone else's love affair. One where her child would know that their worth was never dependent on anyone else's recognition or approval. As she walked into the bustling Lagos evening, navigating between street vendors and rushing commuters, Chioma Nwachukwu began to plan her comeback, success so complete, so undeniable, that the man who had discarded her would spend the rest of his life wondering what he had thrown away for a woman who had already proven she would abandon him when convenient. 3 years later, the tech world would know the name Chioma FinTech. From a small office in Yoba that she rented with the divorce settlement, Chioma had built something revolutionary, a financial platform specifically designed for African women entrepreneurs. While Emeka's company focused on serving banks and corporations, Chioma understood the real market, the millions of market women, seamstresses, hairstylists, and small business owners who were ignored by traditional financial institutions. Her app allowed these women to save, invest, and access microloans through rotating credit associations digitized for the mobile age. It was brilliant in its simplicity, powerful in its impact. Within 18 months, Chioma FinTech had 3 million active users across Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya. The tech industry took notice. Forbes featured her on their 30 Under 30 Africa list. CNN profiled her as one of the women revolutionizing African fintech. International investors who had once dismissed her as Emeka's assistant now lined up to fund her expansion. But the sweetest victory came on a rainy Thursday evening in 2024. Chioma was leaving her new headquarters in Victoria Island, a gleaming 15-story building that housed Chioma FinTech's growing empire, when she saw them. Emeka and Adoni, standing outside a neighboring office building, both looking older, worn by struggles she recognized too well. The newspaper headlines had told the story she'd been too busy to follow closely. Emeka's company had begun failing 6 months after their divorce. Without Chioma's strategic vision, he had made expansion decisions that proved disastrous. The European market that Adoni had promised to unlock never materialized. Her London connections were more impressive on paper than in practice. Regulatory challenges in multiple countries drained their resources. Competitors who understood local markets better had slowly stolen their user base. The final blow had been a security breach that exposed customer data, exactly the kind of crisis Chioma had always anticipated and prepared for, but which caught Emeka's new team completely off guard. The company that had once been valued at $50 million was now worth less than the office furniture. Now Emeka looked like a man who had lost everything twice, first through his own blindness, then through the cruel irony of getting exactly what he thought he wanted. As Chioma walked toward her car, a modest but reliable vehicle, because she had learned that true wealth wasn't about showing off, Emeka's eyes met hers across the busy street. She saw recognition dawn on his face, followed quickly by something that looked like regret. He started toward her, but Chioma's 3-year-old son chose that moment to run from his nanny's arms straight into his mother's embrace. Little Kelechi was beautiful, with Emeka's intelligent eyes and Chioma's determined chin, and when he laughed, it was like music in the Lagos evening air. "Mama, you came!" Kelechi exclaimed in the mix of English and Igbo that Chioma was teaching him, reminding him of his roots even as he grew up with every advantage she could provide. Emeka stopped walking. From across the street, she could see the exact moment he realized this was his son, the child he had dismissed as a complication, the miracle he had thrown away for a woman who was not preparing to abandon him a second time. Chioma lifted Kelechi into her arms and looked directly at Emeka. She felt no anger anymore, no bitterness. Only a profound sadness for the man who had traded authentic love for the illusion of completion, who had chosen the woman who left him over the woman who had built him up. As her driver opened the car door and she settled Kelechi into his car seat, Chioma caught a glimpse of Adoni through the office window behind Emeka. Even from a distance, her body language spoke of someone preparing for another strategic exit, another calculated abandonment when the going got tough. Some people never learned. "Mama, why is that man staring at us?" Kelechi asked in his innocent way. Chioma looked back once more at Emeka, still standing frozen on the sidewalk, and felt something like peace settle in her chest. "He's just someone Mama used to know, baby," she said softly. "Someone who taught Mama that the best love is the love that grows from your own strength." As their car pulled into Lagos traffic, heading home to the comfortable house in Lekki Phase 1 where Chioma was raising her son surrounded by love and possibility, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had lost a husband and gained herself. She had lost a company and built an empire. She had lost the illusion of forever and found the reality of enough. Behind them, Emeka remained on the sidewalk, watching the taillights of the car that carried his son and the woman whose worth he had never truly understood until it was too late. Adoni's voice called from the building, probably already planning her exit strategy from a sinking ship. But Chioma Nwachukwu drove toward her future, her son chattering happily in the back seat, her empire growing stronger every day, her heart finally whole. She had won the only victory that mattered. The triumph of a woman who had refused to let betrayal define her, who had turned abandonment into independence, who had transformed heartbreak into an empire that would lift other women up instead of tearing them down. The gates that had once locked her out now seemed impossibly small in the rearview mirror of the life she had built with her own hands, her own vision, her own unbreakable will.